should have known the job was a bad idea from the start. The listing was vague. Overnight desk clerk needed. Good pay, light duties, inquire within. There wasn't even a phone number, just an address on a back road I didn't recognize. But I was desperate. I'd been laid off 2 weeks earlier, rent was overdue, and the thought of getting evicted again made my stomach turn. Creekside Motel sat just off Highway 21, hidden behind a row of twisted pine trees. It looked like it hadn't seen a fresh coat of paint since the 70s. The neon sign buzzed weakly, half the letters flickering so it read more like CE Side Wantel. The whole place smelled like wet carpet and old cigarettes. Still, I pulled into the gravel lot and stepped out, trying to ignore the way the air felt. Thick, heavy, like the atmosphere was watching me. The front lobby was small and dimly lit, a cracked bell on the desk and faded wallpaper curling at the seams. Behind the counter sat a woman in her 60s, wiry gray hair pulled into a tight bun. Her name tag said Margot in faded gold letters. "You the applicant?" she asked, not looking up from her crossword. "Yeah, I saw the ad." She slid a folder across the desk. "Read the rules, sign the form. If you're still here after the third night, we'll talk about weekly pay." There was no interview, no questions, just a manila folder labeled Night Clerk Orientation, read before shift. I opened it, expecting schedule details or a tax form. Instead, I found a list. Rules for night clerk. Creekside Motel, do not deviate. Room 2 always checks in at 12:01 a.m. You do not need to hand them a key. Do not speak to the occupant. Do not watch them leave. Do not rent room 6. Ever. Even if it's empty. Especially if it's empty. If the phone rings between 3 a.m. and 3:15 a.m., do not answer it. Room 9 must be checked every hour on the hour. If the door is open, shut it. If it's locked, knock once and walk away. Never enter. You may hear music from the vending room at 2:33 a.m. There is no vending room. Ignore it. If a second version of you enters the lobby, offer it coffee and keep it talking until sunrise. My throat went dry. I looked up at Margot, expecting a smirk, maybe a "just kidding." But she was already getting up from her chair, grabbing a coat from the hook behind her. "Wait," I said. "This is a joke, right?" She paused, hand on the doorknob. "You'll figure it out," she muttered, "or you won't." And just like that, she left. I stood there in the lobby, the folder still in my hand, the buzzing neon outside casting long shadows across the front desk. For a second, I thought about leaving. No job was worth this. But something about the motel, about the rules, held me in place, like a dare whispered in the back of my mind. I read through the rules again, slower this time. Some of it was so ridiculous I almost laughed. A second version of me? What the hell was that supposed to mean? But the wording, it was too specific, too certain. You don't say, especially if it's empty, unless something bad happens when it is. I took the chair behind the desk and settled in for the night. The motel was quiet. Only a few rooms had their lights on. A blinking security monitor showed static-laced feeds from old cameras that barely worked. I passed the time flipping through an outdated magazine, watching the clock on the wall crawl toward midnight. At 12:01 a.m. on the dot, the front door creaked open. A man walked in, tall, thin, dressed in an old-fashioned black suit that didn't quite fit. His face was off, too pale, too still, like it had been carved, not grown. He didn't speak, just stared at me, eyes glassy and distant. I remembered the rule. Room 2 checks in at 12:01. Don't speak, don't watch them leave. My lips stayed shut, My eyes dropped to the desk. The man walked past slowly, his shoes clicking against the tile like metronome ticks. I heard a key turn, though I never gave him one. A door closed. Silence. I sat frozen in the chair, every muscle tight, pulse hammering in my ears. The magazine slipped from my hands. The night had just started. I didn't move for what felt like half an hour. The clock above the desk ticked past 12:30 a.m., but I was still frozen in place, my eyes flicking toward the hallway every few seconds like I expected that pale-faced man to come walking back through the lobby. But he didn't. Room 2 stayed quiet. The silence in that motel wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like it had weight to it, pushing down on everything. No wind outside, no hum of nearby traffic. Even the vending machine in the corner sat dark and unplugged. I wondered if that was the vending room from Rule 5. I hoped not. Eventually, I stood up, walked a slow loop through the lobby, and checked the door. Locked. I peered outside. Just my car and the gravel lot. Nothing but blackness beyond the edge of the pine trees. I hadn't seen another soul for hours, but the whole place felt full, like I wasn't alone. I returned to the desk and pulled the rule sheet from the folder again. Rule 2. Do not rent room 6, ever, even if it's empty, especially if it's empty. I turned toward the wall-mounted key rack behind me. Each key hung from a brass hook labeled with faded gold numbers. Most were still there. Room 2 was gone as expected, but room 6 caught my eye. The key was there, hanging as if nothing were wrong. A logbook sat beneath the keys, an old spiral-bound ledger. I flipped to the most recent pages. Room 6 hadn't been checked out in over 4 years. Nothing. No names, no notes, just a blank space next to the number, except one line. Do not use, scrawled in red ink, underlined 3 times. I sat back down and tried to shake the feeling crawling up my spine. Just an old room, right? Maybe it had black mold or faulty wiring, but then why phrase it like that? And why did it say, especially if it's empty? I looked back at the clock, 1:12 a.m. The next hour crept by like cold molasses. I watched the cameras, stared at the lobby doors. Nothing happened until it did. At exactly 2:01 a.m., a loud click echoed through the hallway. My head snapped up. One of the monitors, camera 4, showed room 6's door slowly swinging open. I stood abruptly. That room was supposed to be locked. For a moment, I just stared at the monitor, hoping the grainy static was playing tricks on me. But it wasn't. Room 6's door was open, just a crack. The hallway beyond it was still. I shouldn't have gone. Every instinct screamed to stay behind the desk, to pretend I hadn't seen anything. But my legs moved on their own, driven by a mixture of fear and stupid curiosity. The hallway smelled different, like old books and burnt hair. I passed room 2. No sound, no light. I kept walking. Room 6's door was wide open now, not cracked, not ajar. Open. I stopped in front of it, trying to see inside. The lights were off. My flashlight barely pierced the gloom, but I could make out a worn carpet, a toppled chair, and something smeared across the wall. At first, I thought it was water damage. But no, it was handprints, blackened ones. Then I heard it, a low whisper, not words, just the sound of breath against breath, coming from inside the room, getting closer. I backed away slowly, but the door didn't close. It stayed open like it was waiting. Then, out of the darkness, a figure stepped into the doorway. It wasn't a man, or a woman, or even fully human. It had no eyes, no mouth, just a face stretched into a blank, fleshy canvas. Its arms hung too long. Its body was slightly too narrow, like it had been compressed to fit inside the skin. It tilted its head, just slightly, like it was curious. I turned and ran, back through the hallway, slamming the front desk door shut behind me, locking it twice. My heart pounded against my ribs like it was trying to escape. The camera for room 6 flickered once, then went to static. When it came back on, the door was closed again, key still on the hook. I sank into the desk chair, wiping sweat from my forehead, my fingers trembling as I pulled the rule sheet from the folder again. I had broken Rule 2. I hadn't gone in, but I'd gotten close. Too close. And now I had a sinking feeling that whatever was in room 6 knew I was here. By the time the clock struck 2:30 a.m., I had locked every interior door I could find. Desk drawer, locked. Back office, locked. Even the bathroom behind the reception counter had a deadbolt, and I clicked it into place like that might keep something, anything, out. I couldn't stop shaking. Every few seconds I'd glance at the camera feed for room 6. The door was still shut, no movement in the hallway, but that didn't mean it was over. I thought about calling someone, anyone, but my cell had 0 reception out here, and the motel landline sat silent, the cord curled like a sleeping snake. I didn't even want to touch it. Then I remembered Rule 3. If the phone rings between 3 a.m. and 3:15 a.m., do not answer it. The warning made sense now. This wasn't a place for logic, it was a place for rules. Break them, and the motel noticed. And tonight, I had already broken one. I tried to distract myself, flipped through the logbook again, drank stale coffee from the half-functioning machine in the corner. But nothing calmed me, because I could feel something. It was like the motel had changed after room 6 opened. Heavier air, thicker shadows, like the building had begun to breathe. The hands on the wall clock reached 2:59 a.m. I watched them move with dread, second by second. At exactly 3:01, the phone rang. It didn't sound like a regular phone ring. It was deeper, slower, like the bell was underwater. Ring. I jumped back from the counter, nearly knocking over the stool. The sound filled the lobby like a foghorn, thick, distorted, vibrating in my chest. Ring. I covered my ears, backing away until I hit the door behind me. I stared at the phone, willing it to stop. Ring. Then, just for a second, I swear the lights dimmed. The bulbs above me flickered, their buzzing louder than before. My skin crawled. I couldn't take it anymore. I reached out and yanked the cord from the phone. It kept ringing. The dial pad was dead. No display, no power. But the sound continued. It echoed from the receiver like it had a life of its own, like the motel itself was calling me. Ring. Then it stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the sound. I didn't move. Did that count as answering? No. I hadn't picked up. I hadn't said a word. I'd followed the rule. Mostly. I sank back into the chair behind the desk, still gripping the receiver cable in my hand like it might come to life again. Outside, the neon sign buzzed against the window, flickering randomly. My eyes flicked up to the cameras. Room 2, quiet. Room 6, closed. Room 9. My stomach dropped. The door was open. I hadn't even thought to check it. Rule 4. Room 9 must be checked every hour on the hour. If the door is open, shut it. If it's locked, knock once and walk away. Never enter. I scrambled for my phone. 3:09 a.m. I was late. I grabbed the master key ring, flashlight, and rule sheet and half jogged down the hallway toward room 9, counting the doors as I passed them. The motel's carpet squished beneath my feet like it had soaked up years of spills and secrets. I reached the door. It was wide open and cold. The air coming from inside was bitter, like stepping into a freezer. My breath turned white in the beam of my flashlight. I reached out and slowly pushed the door shut. It clicked into place like any normal door would, but as soon as it closed, I heard a single knock from inside. Knock, knock, knock. Not me knocking. It was knocking at me. I took one step back, then another, then turned and bolted down the hall. Back in the lobby, I locked the door behind me, chest heaving, sweat dripping down my neck despite the cold. I'd followed Rule 4, barely, but whatever lived behind that door, it knew I'd been late. The motel didn't forgive easily, and now I had one more hour before the strangest rule of all might come into play. Rule 6. If a second version of you enters the lobby, offer it coffee and keep it talking until sunrise. I looked at the office mirror hanging behind the desk. I didn't like the way I was looking at myself. By 3:45 a.m., the motel felt different. Not louder, not more active, just more awake. The kind of awake that makes you feel like the walls are listening. Like if you said the wrong thing out loud, the wallpaper might peel back and reveal something watching you. I paced the lobby, hands trembling slightly, eyes scanning the dark corners. Every few seconds I'd check the monitor feeds again. Room 2 stayed quiet. Room 6 looked sealed. Room 9 remained shut. But I knew better now than to trust what I could see. I kept glancing at the clock. 3:56 a.m. Only one rule left to survive. Rule 6. If a second version of you enters the lobby, offer it coffee and keep it talking until sunrise. At first, I thought that one was a joke, a prank. Now, after Room 6, after the knock at Room 9, it didn't feel funny anymore. I tried to picture what I would do if someone walked in wearing my face. I didn't have to imagine for long. At exactly 4 a.m., the front door creaked open. It was me. Same flannel shirt, same dark jeans, even the scuff mark on my left boot. He stepped into the lobby casually, like he belonged here. Like this was his job, and I was the intruder. He didn't look surprised to see me. If anything, he looked amused. "Coffee?" I asked, forcing the words past the lump in my throat. He smiled, my smile, and nodded. "Thought you'd never ask." My legs moved on autopilot. I shuffled to the side counter, fumbling with the ancient coffee machine, trying to keep my eyes off him. It took everything in me not to stare at the way his reflection didn't quite match his movements in the glass. He sat on the stool across the counter, fingers tapping a slow rhythm. Same fingers, same rhythm I did when I was nervous. I handed him the coffee. He took it, sipped it black, and gave me a look like it was just how he liked it. "You're doing better than the last one," he said. "The last what?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. He smirked. "Last clerk, he didn't offer coffee, tried to run." My stomach turned. And what happened to him? He raised the cup and took another long sip. He's still here, somewhere. That silenced me. We sat like that for minutes. Me standing behind the desk, him drinking calmly, our breathing nearly in sync. His eyes flicked around the room, scanning the monitors, the keys, the rules on the desk like he'd read them 1,000 times. "They don't tell you the rules change sometimes," he said suddenly, setting the cup down. I froze. "What do you mean? You think they're written in stone?" He chuckled softly. "Nah, the motel rewrites them, adjusts, learns from you." He leaned in slightly. "Tell me, has room 4 asked to be let out yet?" I shook my head. "Good. he said, "but it will. And when it does, don't listen, no matter how much it cries." I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to believe him, but something about his voice, it wasn't just similar, it was mine. It was me. "How do I know you're not lying?" I asked. He grinned again, tapping the empty coffee mug. "I drank the coffee. That makes me real." I looked down at the cup, unsure of whether I should laugh or scream. "Sunrise is in 40 minutes, I muttered. "What happens then?" He stood, stretching like a man waking from a nap. "That depends on you." He walked toward the front door, stopped at the edge of the mat, and turned. "You know the rules," he said, "but the motel doesn't care if you understand them, just that you obey." And with that, he stepped outside. The door swung shut behind him. I ran to the window, but the parking lot was empty. No footsteps in the gravel, no silhouette fading into the trees. Just fog, thick and heavy, coiling around the edges of the building like it was waiting. I returned to the desk, my legs numb. I stared at the empty coffee cup, still warm, still real. I sat in silence until the sky started to brighten beyond the pine trees. Just a sliver of blue beneath the black. The motel didn't feel any safer in daylight. But I had survived another night, and I had a feeling things were only going to get worse. I didn't sleep when I got home. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling as sunlight crept through the blinds, playing tricks on my eyes. Every sound from the hallway outside my apartment made me flinch. Every creak in the floorboards reminded me of the slow, deliberate steps of that thing with my face. I thought about quitting, but when I reached for my phone to call the number from the job listing, the contact was gone. Just vanished. No email, no name, no sign the job had ever been offered. So that night, I returned. Not because I wanted to, because the motel hadn't finished with me. The lot looked emptier than usual. The neon sign buzzed and blinked like it was on life support. The windows along the hallway were fogged from the inside, like something had been breathing against the glass all day long. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. Everything was where I left it. The coffee machine, the key hooks, the static hissing cameras. The logbook lay open on the desk, but now a fresh page had been filled in with an unfamiliar, frantic scrawl. "Listen to nothing that comes from room 4. Do not acknowledge. Do not respond. Do not open." There was no signature, no timestamp. Just that single page, scribbled in black ink like the pen had been gripped too tightly by shaking fingers. The rule sheet hadn't mentioned room 4. I checked the keys. Room 4's key was there, dusty and untouched. But when I checked the camera feed, room 4's door was open. Not wide open, just enough to suggest it hadn't been locked, just enough to feel like an invitation. I stared at the screen for a full minute. Nothing moved. No shadows, no flickering lights. I should have ignored it. But at 12:43 a.m., the phone rang. Not the deep, slow tone from the forbidden 3 a.m. calls, just a normal ring this time. I picked up carefully. Creekside Motel, night desk. There was silence on the other end. Then a whisper. "He's in the room. He's in room 4. The voice sounded small, frightened, like a child. "Who is this?" I asked. No response. I hung up. The camera for room 4 flickered once, then again. I leaned in closer. The door, which had been cracked, now stood completely open. And then the voice came again, but not from the phone, from the hallway. "Help me. Please." It was the same voice, software fragile, like someone huddled in a corner, begging to be noticed. I stood and moved slowly toward the hallway, flashlight in hand. heart pounding hard enough that I thought it might echo. Please, he locked me in here. It came from room 4. I reached the door. It was open now, but only by an inch, just enough to show darkness beyond. I stared through the gap. Please, the voice cried, now muffled like it came from under a bed. He has my skin. He's wearing my face. I stepped back. That was too close to what my double had said, too close to what I'd seen. Something shifted inside the room. I heard movement, a scraping sound, like something dragging nails across linoleum. Don't let him do it again. Then the voice changed. It dropped an octave, became slower, more guttural. Open the door. My skin prickled. My legs locked in place. I shined the flashlight through the crack. A single hand reached out, pale, trembling fingers stretching into the light. But it was backward. The thumb was where the pinky should have been. The joints bent wrong. Please, the voice hissed again, now completely inhuman. I slammed the door shut and backed away. The voice didn't yell. It didn't scream. It just whispered, over and over. Open the door. Open the door. Open the door. All the way back to the lobby. I relocked the hallway, sat behind the desk, gripped the logbook in white-knuckled hands. The whispering never got louder, but it never stopped either. Even through the walls, I could hear it, scraping at the edge of my hearing like claws on glass. Room 4 didn't want to be opened. It wanted to be invited. And I had a feeling someone before me had accepted. By 2:15 a.m., the whispering had finally stopped. Not faded, stopped. Like someone had snapped their fingers and killed the sound in midair. I would have been grateful, if not for the fact that silence in this place usually meant something worse was coming. I sat behind the desk, chewing my thumbnail, eyes fixed on the flickering camera feeds. Room 2? Still. Room 4? Door shut. Quiet. Room 6? No movement, but the key. The key was missing. I stared at the hook. I hadn't touched it. I knew that for certain. I reached beneath the counter, flicked on the hallway floodlights. They buzzed to life, casting a yellow glow through the cameras. I expected to see shadows dancing in the corners, but everything remained still. That was when I heard the music. Faint at first. Tinny, like it was coming from a busted speaker somewhere far off. A slow, stuttering melody that tugged at something old in my brain. Something nostalgic. Carousel music. I froze. Rule 5. You may hear music from the vending room at 2:33 a.m. There is no vending room. Ignore it. I glanced at the clock. 2:32 a.m. No vending room. That's what it said. But the music was getting louder. Still distant, but clearer now. It sounded like a lullaby filtered through static. I stood and backed away from the desk, trying not to look at the hallway, even though my eyes were already drifting toward it. The air changed, grew thick, syrupy, like the pressure dropped. I closed my eyes, covered my ears. The music kept playing, seeping through my palms. Underneath it, barely noticeable, was a low whirring hum, like refrigeration units cycling on. And then, the soft clink of coins dropping into a slot. I couldn't help it. I opened my eyes. Camera 5 was now showing a hallway I didn't recognize. Rows of machines lined the walls. Candy, chips, soda, all illuminated with a bluish glow. The camera shook slightly, like it wasn't mounted to a wall, as if it were breathing. There was no camera 5 before tonight. There was no vending room. But there it was. And then a figure stepped into view. I leaned forward, eyes narrowing. It was me, again. But not like the double from the other night. This version of me was thinner, paler, like someone had wrung the blood from my skin. He walked with a limp, dragging one leg behind him like it was partially detached. His head lolled to the side in unnatural angles every few steps. He stopped at one of the vending machines and stared at it. Then, with a twitching hand, he reached out and pressed the keypad. A 4. The machine whirred. He didn't reach in to grab the snack. He just stood there, face pressed against the glass, as the carousel spun endlessly, the same bag of chips rotating over and over, never falling. The music swelled, filling the room with a sickly, nostalgic warmth. Then he turned and looked directly into the camera. His eyes were sunken hollows, dark and dripping, and he smiled. Not the nervous, tired smile I'd given a dozen guests over the years. This was glee, madness, permission. I staggered back from the monitor and hit the switch to kill the hallway lights. The feed for camera 5 cut to static. The music stopped. Everything was quiet again. I collapsed into the desk chair, heart pounding in my ears. My fingers trembled as I flipped the rule sheet one more time, checking every word like it might save me. There is no vending room. Ignore it. I had looked, I'd seen it, and I had a feeling that thing, that version of me, had seen me too. I reached for the key drawer to check if anything else was out of place. That's when I saw it. A receipt, tucked between the pages of the logbook. Freshly printed, still curling from heat. Creekside Motel, vending receipt, 2:34 a.m. Item, skin of 4 change, returned, $0, 0 cents. I stared at it, my breath caught in my throat. Somewhere in the motel, a version of me had just bought something, and I didn't want to know what it planned to do with it. I sat behind the desk, the vending receipt still in my hand, trying to breathe like a normal person. Item, skin. The word pulsed in my brain like a drumbeat, over and over. A 4. That bag of chips wasn't chips, and that thing, me, it had made a purchase. I glanced at my arms, suddenly unsure of what was mine, my fingers, my chest, my skin. I touched my face gently, as if I might feel seams or stitching. It felt real, but real meant less and less with every hour inside this place. I checked the time. 3 a.m., exactly 31 minutes left. If I could just stay behind this desk until sunrise, maybe I'd walk away with my mind intact. Maybe. I checked the camera feeds again. Room 2, door shut. Room 4, still closed but darker than it should be. Room 6, key still missing. Room 9, closed. No knocks. Camera 5, static. Thank God. For a while, nothing happened. But then, headlights, camera 1, facing the lot, flickered to life as a black and white police cruiser rolled into the frame, crawling slowly across the gravel. I sat up straight. Relief flooded me for a moment. Finally, help. But then I remembered. Rule 5 from my first night. Not on the printed sheet, but etched into my memory. There may be a patrol car that looks like ours, but the numbers will be all wrong. Do not acknowledge it. Do not get out of your car if it pulls up beside you. My mouth went dry. I leaned toward the monitor and zoomed in on the cruiser's number stenciled on the door. 666. It stopped just outside the lobby, engine idling, siren lights off, just sitting there humming. My fingers twitched near the counter. Was I supposed to lock the door? Speak? Hide? A spotlight on the car's side clicked on with a soft whir and pointed directly at the front desk window. I ducked out of view instinctively, my heart leaping into my throat. A voice crackled through an unseen speaker. "This is Officer Daniels. Just doing a wellness check, sir. Mind letting me in?" The voice was warm, familiar. Just a guy doing his job. But I didn't move. The rule was clear. Do not acknowledge it. The speaker crackled again. "Sir, we've had a report of suspicious activity at this location. Room 6, correct? You're not in any danger, are you?" My hand crept toward the radio behind the desk, but I stopped. I remembered what my double had said. They don't tell you the rules change sometimes. I couldn't trust anything. "Sir, please respond." The voice hardened. Failure to comply may result in escalation. Outside, the cruiser's engine revved slightly. The cameras began to flicker. Then, without warning, I heard a knock. Knock, knock, knock. Not at the door, at the window beside the front desk. I turned, against my better judgment, and saw a silhouette peering in. The patrolman. But something was wrong. He wore a uniform, but the badge was upside down. His face was pressed too hard against the glass, warping unnaturally. His hand knocked again, palm twisted in the opposite direction like the wrist had spun too far. Knock, knock, knock. His mouth moved, but no words came out. I turned away, sat down, focused on the blinking red dot on the coffee maker, the hum of the fluorescent light. Knock, knock, knock. Then silence. I checked the monitor again. The cruiser was gone, just like that. The gravel undisturbed, no tire marks, no headlights driving away, just gone. I dared to breathe again. 3:29 a.m., 31 more minutes. My shoulders slumped, my muscles ached. I sat in silence, waiting, until the phone rang. I didn't even move. I knew better now, but this time, it wasn't the slow, underwater ring from 3 a.m. It was different. It rang once, then stopped, and then a text came through on my phone. Unknown number. "Thank you for your compliance. We will try again tomorrow." I dropped the phone. Tried again? This wasn't just hauntings or tricks anymore. The motel was testing me, studying, and it wasn't finished yet. At 3:47 a.m., the air shifted again. It started subtle. A change in pressure, like the atmosphere itself had sucked in a breath and was holding it. The static on the monitors settled. The hum of the coffee machine dulled. Even the flickering neon outside froze mid-blink. Stillness. Too still. I stood up, heart pounding. Every instinct screamed that something had changed, that something had arrived. I checked the camera feeds. All doors were closed. No movement in the hallways, no signs of anything at all. Until room 2. The screen flickered once, then twice, then the door slowly opened. That wasn't supposed to happen. Room 2 always arrived. It never left. A figure stepped into the hallway, tall, in that ill-fitting black suit, skin pale and waxy. It didn't walk. It glided. Its face was blank, not just emotionless, featureless. A smooth surface stretched where eyes and nose should have been. Only a mouth remained. A faint slit that curved slightly upward, like it was trying to remember how to smile. I turned from the monitor and locked the office door. There was no rule for what to do if room 2 comes back out. A thud echoed in the hallway. Then another, and another. Something dragging. It passed the office once, paused, then kept going. I held my breath, praying it wasn't heading toward the front lobby. The monitor showed it gliding toward room 6. The missing key. The thing from room 2 raised its arm, long and stiff, and touched the handle. And then, impossibly, it opened the door. Room 6 opened willingly. The feed crackled. Inside room 6 was blackness, not darkness, absence. Like the camera had stopped filming the world and was staring into void. And that's when they stepped out together. 2 figures, one from room 2, and something from room 6. I couldn't make it out completely, only impressions. Too many arms, skin like oil slicks, a mouth that wasn't in the right place. They didn't walk so much as ripple forward. toward the lobby, toward me. The office door groaned. I stepped back, scanning the desk for anything. A weapon, a salt shaker, a cross. I would have taken a squirt bottle of holy water if I had it. Then I remembered the final note the last clerk had left in the logbook. If they both come out, you have one option. Use the envelope. I hadn't seen an envelope. I tore open drawers, tossed books aside, nothing, until I saw the old Bible on the shelf behind me. It hadn't been touched in years, thick with dust and mold. Inside, tucked between the pages of Revelation, was a sealed black envelope with one word written in red ink. Last resort. No instructions, no explanation, just the weight of desperation soaked into the paper. I tore it open. Inside was a single match and a note. Burn the logbook. My eyes darted to the desk. The ledger, filled with rules, names, warnings, every rule I had followed or broken. I hesitated. What if the logbook was the only thing keeping me alive? But then the office door handle turned. Slowly, deliberately. I struck the match. The flame flared to life, casting long shadows, and I dropped it onto the logbook. The fire caught fast, swallowing the pages like they were soaked in gasoline. Black smoke curled up toward the ceiling, and for a moment I thought I'd made a mistake. But then the motel screamed. Not the people, not the rooms, the building. A low, grinding howl that shook the tiles under my feet. The walls breathed in and exhaled ash. Outside, the neon sign exploded, the monitors went dark, and the door, just inches from opening, stopped moving. I stood in the smoke, blinking through the haze as the logbook turned to blackened curls and ashes. The clock above the desk, long frozen at 3:47, ticked. Once, twice, then resumed its normal rhythm. 4:58 a.m. I waited. No more voices, no more footsteps, no more calls, just silence. And then, slowly, the sun rose, not with golden beams, just a pale line across the edge of the woods, soft and gray like the world was remembering how to be real again. I stepped outside. The gravel crunched beneath my feet. The air felt thinner, cooler, cleaner. I didn't look back at the building. I didn't need to. The motel had let me go. For now. Later, when I drove past the highway, the sign was gone. The road to Creekside wasn't there anymore. Just trees where asphalt should have been. No listing, no job, no map pin. Just one scar across my palm where I'd gripped the burning ledger too tightly. There are places that don't belong on maps, and jobs that were never meant to be filled. If you ever find one like that, and they give you rules, follow them. Every single one. Because some motels check you in, and some never want you to leave.